Hi guys, Lindsay here with Storybook Family Farm. So I normally don't film this early in the morning, so if the songbirds are kind of bothersome, I'm terribly sorry. I kind of have to film really early because across the street they started disking up the massive field. This whole past month, they've been doing tons and tons of work in the field across the street, so I haven't been able to film very easily because of how much noise there is, which is kind of a frustrating bit of living where we're at. But it got me thinking about the fact of that, we want to move from this space, but we have no idea when that's going to happen. And seeing as how this has happened to us two different times now since we started homesteading in a space that was essentially a temporary setup to then move to somewhere else, we're kind of old pros at this. And I assume that there's a lot of people that are also in their period of waiting for their land or waiting for their perfect place to homestead. So I want to shoot a video based off of what my tips and tricks are when you're homesteading on less than ideal land that you know is a temporary situation, but you want to keep growing your own food because, well, things in the world today are kind of in that state where you're like, should I trust this? Should I trust that? So let's just get into it. So one of the ways that me and my wife, we have basically figured out how to homestead while living in a temporary situation. The only way that our brains can process this is to plant like you are never going to leave. So that means plant all the fruit trees, the berry bushes, do all the perennial things, do all the flowers, do all of that stuff. Worst comes to worst, if you end up finding your place within the next year or so of planting various different things, you can usually dig it up relatively easily, stick it in a pot, and then move it to your new farm or your new homestead or your land, whatever you are doing. So that was something that when we lived in town, we struggled with really bad because we had wanted to move, but back when we decided that we wanted to move, it was towards the end of 2019, right before the whole housing market bubble started blowing up and getting huge, and everything started going crazy. So we were very low income. We only had one income. We didn't make very much money. So we were pretty much kind of screwed in terms of being able to find something with land, because that suddenly became everything that anyone was looking for was something that was more rural, that was away from the city, that was away from town. The exact thing that we wanted, but we just wanted it for a different reason. But so it was very difficult for us to figure out what to do because we didn't want to invest in a whole bunch of money into our property of planting fruit trees, berry bushes, doing all that stuff if we were going to find our next home in a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year. We had no idea. We just kept looking and eventually nothing came up. So we did a crazy big leap of selling everything and living in a camper. But that's beyond the point. So what we did was we planted stuff as if we were never going to leave because we figured that on the off chance that something crazy went down that we couldn't leave, we at least already had this stuff planted. We could at least already learn about how to propagate things from cuttings, what to do with the fruit, what fruits we like, what we didn't like. And it also made it so we could plant fruit trees along the property line and berry bushes along the property line, giving us more property. Well, not property. Didn't give us any more property. Let's be straight on that. It gave us more privacy, so it felt like we had more property. But so there was benefits to all of that. Plus, the wildlife actually really enjoyed having more trees in our yard and different places that they could hide. And it made it so that way it felt a lot more peaceful on our land. So it was absolutely worth it. Now, from that point on, it was about 2 years after that we ended up being able to. It was about 2 years that we ended up deciding that we couldn't take the being there anymore, and we just sort of pushed ourselves out of that situation. That then led us down a big, long journey to get us to where we're at now. And where we're at now, we are not happy with where we are, so we're basically in the same position all over again. With that being said, we do want to move from here. We are actively looking for places, just online, not with a realtor or anything like that yet, because why get a realtor when there's nothing on the market yet? So we are still planting fruit trees. We are still doing the things as if we were never going to leave here. That is not to say that we want to stay here forever. It is very much of, well, we're here. We should make the best of what we have, bloom where we're planted, and basically try to absorb as much knowledge and information as possible while gardening, while growing food, but also so then that way we can restock our pantry. The last year that we grew a bountiful harvest was the year that we left town. So we have not had a significant harvest to fill our pantry back up since 2021 growing season. That is a long time to go without having, a resupply coming up. So it was kind of wild because I told Tracy, that's my wife's name if you're new to this channel, I had told her back in 21 when the garden was like producing massive amounts, and it usually takes a couple years for a new garden to really crank out production and to get the soil health really good and all that stuff. I told her, I'm like, you know what? We're getting like 2 to 3 times what we need for this year alone with what we're growing. I'm like, I bet you that we're going to not have a harvest next year. I'm like, because it just seems kind of awfully strange that we're going to try to do this big, bold, crazy thing, and we aren't sure what's going to happen, how things are going to play out with living in a camper and all this. I'm like, I bet you that we're not going to get a harvest next year, and that's why we're being blessed with so much more abundance. Well, wouldn't you know, that harvest that we had in 21 is still carrying us now. Okay, just not with everything, but like with green beans, that year was insane for green beans. So this year we definitely have to grow a lot of beans. But so we kind of have it in our minds that right now we are going to plant, like we're never going to leave this space. We're going to fill up the gardens. We're not going to build raised beds like we had initially talked about when we got here because, well, there's not really much of a point, because if we found our perfect property tomorrow, we would immediately just jump on it, get a realtor, go see it, make an offer, just, get to scooting with it. But what we were trying to do is growing enough food to restock our pantry again. So then that way, if it takes us a year or two to get a really good established garden going someplace, then it's okay. Like, I'm the type that has always been one of those types that kind of is like, okay, well, if there's a bunch of abundance this year, then it's there for a reason. So I'm going to capitalize on it. I'm going to take advantage of it and do the best that I possibly can to preserve the harvest, because someone somewhere at some point thought, they're going to need this extra food. So that's kind of what my whole spiel is of what we're doing, because it might seem kind of confusing and kind of crazy to you guys to watch me be planting trees and doing a garden and all this. Well, you guys know that we actively are waiting for our property. We're looking for it. We're seeking it. We're, our hands are open, hoping that it falls into our lap sometime soon. But it is kind of a weird paradox to, with homesteading, everything is geared towards looking towards the future and planning for the future and growing things for the future and trying to get your homestead to, in the future, produce more for you. So it does make things awfully complicated when you're living in a situation that is less than ideal. You're homesteading in a place you don't want to stay at. So it is kind of a weird mental conundrum to be like, okay, I'm planting this tree, but I might have to dig it back up in a couple months, or I might have to dig it up next year, or it might just stay here. And the worst that happens is the tree stays. You might get some fruit off of it. You might not. You might just learn how to prune a fruit tree. There's a million different things that you might learn, but one thing that you won't do is you won't end up regretting doing it. Unless if you plant hundreds and hundreds of flower bulbs that cost a lot of money, then, you can't dig them up because it's the wrong season. That's another story for another time, because that was kind of sad to dig a bunch of bulbs and then they died. But anyways, for the most part, you won't regret different things that you plant. You won't regret what you do and stuff. Most likely you will be happy that you did it, because you could end up in a situation like we are, where we ended up going 2 years without a harvest, but we're still eating the bounty of what we did a couple years ago. So if you guys are enjoying this content, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends on social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to help us grow. We'd greatly appreciate it. All right, thanks for watching. Have a good one, guys.